9 experienced hikers froze to death in the Ural Mountains. Their tent wasn't torn open by something outside. It was slashed open from the inside. They cut their way out and ran into -30 cold. Barefoot, half-dressed, into the dark. Whatever scared them, they chose the freezing night over staying in. 60 years later, the best answer came from an unlikely place. A Disney movie's snow code. This is the Dyatlov Pass mystery. Start with the people, because they were not fools. The leader was Igor Dyatlov, 23 years old, radio engineer and a hardened winter hiker. His group came from the Ural Polytechnical Institute. Students and athletes, certified for tough grades of mountain travel. Not tourists, not beginners, people who knew the cold. They set out on January 23, 1959. Their goal lay beyond a peak called Kholat Shachel. The name is often translated as Dead Mountain. In the local Mansi tongue, it's closer to a place with no game. Either way, the name would come to fit. They began as 10, not 9. One man, Yuri Yudin, fell ill on the trail. Joint pain forced him to turn back. He said goodbye to his friends and went home. It was the luckiest accident of his life. He would be the only one to grow old. The other 9 pushed deeper into the mountains. On February 1st, they pitched a tent on an open slope. An odd choice, exposed to the wind. Then, sometime in the night, they vanished. When they missed their return date, search parties went out. They found the tent on February 26th. It was half buried in snow and empty. No bodies, no struggle visible from outside. Then, an investigator looked closer at the canvas. The cuts in the fabric went outward. The tent had been opened from the inside. They had not untied the entrance. They had taken knives to the wall and torn out. Inside, almost everything was still there. Boots lined up, coats hanging, food waiting. They had fled into lethal cold without their gear. And the footprints told a strange story. The tracks led downhill, calm and evenly spaced. No signs of running in panic, no chaos. Just bare feet and socks, walking into the dark. Why would 9 trained survivors abandon their only shelter? Why leave warmth in cold that kills in minutes? The slope dropped roughly 1.5 miles. It led toward a line of trees below. That tree line is where the bodies began. 2 were found beside a tall cedar. Next to them, the ashes of a small fire. Branches were snapped off the tree, well above head height, as if they had climbed it, desperate for a view. Or desperate for wood to burn. Both men were stripped down to their underwear. 3 more lay scattered on the slope. Their faces pointed back toward the tent. They appear to have been crawling uphill, trying to return. Dyatlov was among them, frozen mid-effort. They never made it back to camp. But 4 hikers were still missing. Searchers did not find them until May. The snow had to melt before they appeared. They lay in a ravine under several meters of snow. And these 4 had the worst injuries of all. Some of the dead had simply frozen. Hypothermia, cruel but understandable in that cold. But a few were broken from the inside. One hiker had a fractured skull. 2 had crushed chests, ribs snapped apart. Doctors compared the force to a car crash. Yet here is the part that haunts people. The skin above the brakes was barely marked. No cuts, no open wounds over the bones. Massive internal damage, almost no surface trauma. Then there was the detail nobody could unhear. One woman was missing her tongue and her eyes. One man was missing his eyes as well. Investigators also found faint radiation on some clothing. Trace amounts on just a couple of garments. Some of the skin had taken on an eerie orange tan. To many, it looked like the scene of something impossible. And into that vacuum, every theory rushed in. When facts are missing, imagination fills the gap. Some imagined a yeti stalking the mountains. Some blamed infrasound, sound below hearing, driving them mad. Some pictured ball lightning rolling across the slope. Others pointed at secret Soviet weapons. Parachute mines, hidden tests, the KGB silencing witnesses. And of course, somebody said UFOs. None of it was supported by the evidence. But the official verdict only fed the rumors. The Soviet inquiry blamed an unknown compelling natural force, a phrase that explained nothing at all. Then the files were sealed for decades, and every missing answer grew into a legend. For 60 years, Dead Mountain kept its secret. Then, slowly, science began to close in. In 2020, Russian prosecutors reopened the case. Their conclusion pointed to an avalanche. Cold and poor visibility, they said, had done the rest. But for years, one fact seemed to rule that out. The slope looked far too gentle to slide. People assumed it was only around 23 degrees. And weeks after the deaths, searchers saw no obvious avalanche debris. For decades, that kept the avalanche idea on the shelf. In 2021, two scientists revisited the puzzle. Johan Gaume and Alexander Puzrin in a peer-reviewed paper. Drone surveys showed the slope was steeper than it looked, steep enough in places for a slab to release. To pitch the tent, the hikers had cut into that slope. The cut weakened the snow above them. Downslope winds kept piling hard snow on top. Not all at once, but for hours, long after the group had gone to sleep. Then, in the dark, their model suggests a slab let go. A small, heavy block of compacted snow. It would have slid down onto the sleeping tent. And here is how that breaks ribs without breaking skin. Rigid block landing on a body against a hard floor. Skis and frozen ground underneath, snow above. Blunt force crushes the chest and skull, but leaves the surface almost untouched. It matches the injury pattern the doctors described. Now imagine waking to that in the night. A wall of snow, friends injured, the tent collapsing. You might cut your way out too. You would run downhill, away from the slope. Toward the trees, toward any shelter. And then the cold would finish what the snow began. But what about the missing tongue and eyes? The leading explanation is grimly ordinary. One body lay face down in a stream for months. Decomposition in water, plus scavengers and animals. Not a monster, not a mutilation, time and nature. The radiation? Most likely mundane for that era. One victim had worked at a nuclear facility, and lab and camp gear of the day used radioactive materials. The orange skin? Likely cold wind and post-mortem change? No supernatural mark, just bodies left in the open. And the strangest twist of all is a tool. To model how the snow would strike a body, Gaume adapted code built for an animated film. Snow simulation software first used on Disney's Frozen. Animation made for a cartoon helped test a real death. After the paper, more expeditions followed. Independent scientists checked the slopes again. The region is avalanche prone. The slopes can slide. So far, the model has held up under scrutiny. But be honest about what this is. It is the leading, best supported explanation. It is not a sealed-shut certainty. Some details are still debated to this day. And maybe that is the real lesson here. A true mystery is a vacuum. We rush to fill it with monsters. The wilder the gap, the wilder our story. A Yeti is more thrilling than wind and snow. But patient science does not shout. It measures, it models, it closes the gap slowly. 9 people died on a mountain, afraid in the dark. They deserved an answer, not a myth. So when you face your own unknown, remember Dead Mountain. The bravest thing when you don't know is to keep looking.